Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about War in the Fallows by Jahmil and Jahmar Effend. So this is their debut novel, and I think it has a lot of potential and a lot of promise for goodness. So let's talk about it. So remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let's begin. So, War of the Fallows takes place in the world of Caledonia, and it follows three main characters: King Aaron, King Asher, and Queen Mary. And they all are in separate locations, rulers of their own kingdoms. So, as a result, the writing style is very much similar to A Song of Ice and Fire in that the POV switches when it's relevant. So we get a little bit about this character, then we jump to this character, get a little bit, then jump to the other one, get a little bit, and it kind of plays like that throughout the entire story, all culminating in a shared situation. so so as I've mentioned, it's a little similar to A Song of Ice and Fire, but more than just the switching of the POV, it's also in a medieval world. But again, similar to A Song of Ice and Fire, it has its own unique types of twists that makes it very distinct from just a familiar medieval Europe kind of setting. So it's unique while being familiar. So the learning curve is very shallow. So the story takes place in Caledonia, which is split up into multiple kingdoms. So the current rulers have taken over their kingdoms after their parents had ascended to the High Council to become gods. And the High Council, they govern all of Caledonia and not just the area known as the Fallows, which is where our main characters' kingdoms are. They're like in this kingdom neighborhood, you want to call it that? So something like that. Thanks to the art and the maps in the book, it was very easy to contextualize where everything was. I didn't feel very lost when we switched POV because I was like, oh, okay, we're in this location. So it very much was easy. So I really like visual aids like that. Just pretty much any art you add to a book, I'm going to like because I'm an art person. So yeah. So everything about the world building is done really well. So everything from the description of the physical world and the description of their traditions and their processes and the way the rituals and things work, like that's really well done, and you get a really good clear visual for it. And I think that's really impressive that that was able to be done in a book that's less than 500 pages. But something that's probably a direct result of that is the sacrifice of having the characters not be as deep as they could be. While these three main characters that we follow, I mean, there's multiple side characters and stuff, of course, but these main three are the ones that we truly follow and try to get to know. We didn't get really deep into who they are because there just simply wasn't enough page time to really get deep into who they are. And sadly, this had kind of a runoff effect on some of the side characters. There were some characters that would show up that would have a clear, deep relationship with one of our main characters, but we have no context or no real understanding for it. So we just kind of have to pick it up and get used to it through the interaction. So I think that's honestly truly a issue of the size of the book, because you kind of got to rush through some of the events in order to get to the main, the main plot, the main. So yeah, it's not that big of a gripe, but because the depth that we get in the world building, the characters came off a little shallow. So it's not terrible because what we did get of the characters was really good and a lot of fun, but I just wanted more. So that's a really good thing to leave your readers with anyway, though. Just always leave wanting more. So next up, I want to talk about the writing style. While I did have a lot of fun with the story and really did enjoy the setting, the writing style is the primary thing that kind of bugged me. It feels like because Jahmar and Jahmil had to, were co-writing, not necessarily had to, but because they are co-writing, they needed to basically cultivate a unified voice so that the book doesn't read like it's being written by two people. And I think that resulted in this writing style that, while it reminds me of A Song of Ice and Fire in its poetic nature, it kind of is clumsy with the way things are described. So there's a character introduction early on in the book that just kind of took me out and took me completely out of it and left me honestly a little confused because the descriptors were so unnatural. So I want to read that part so you can get a feel of what I'm talking about. So the line goes, Lady J was slender and tall with stone black hair that seemed to fall until winter. Her skin was a dark brown shade, and she had the chestnut eyes typical of the lovejoys of old Tomasa, or Tomasia. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. But that right there, the descriptor of the color of her hair and the length of her hair just took me aback, and it was weird and it's off. So what I mean by that though is so the idea of describing someone as having stone black hair took me out of it, because to me that just, it didn't, I felt like a computer with a glitch. Like I stuttered and everything in the moment, because I like, the only black stones that exist is obsidian, which is volcanic glass, and onyx, which is a mineral, which I mean I guess technically is a rock, but it's, I would have said something like hair the color of onyx, or like volcanic glass, or something like something, a descriptor that will immediately call up a visual. Just saying stone black is like, what stone? Like it's not recognizable enough to be a proper descriptor in my opinion. Similar with the description of the length of her hair. Just saying her hair falls until winter, while that kind of sounds like a really cool poetic line, because it sounds like poetry and I dig it, but as a description, it gives me almost nothing. Like it just implies that her hair is long. I don't know if it's like falling to her butt, her mid back, or to the back of her knees. Like it's so, it feels like unnatural descriptors, and it feels like it's leaning more into poetry than it is into proper describing. So that's kind of the issue I had with it, because that's kind of sprinkled throughout the book. And there's almost a, I mean, this is, you know, purely my opinion, because it's my channel, so it's all my opinion. But the there's quite a bit of describing of eyes. Like, while this is, I guess, a pure taste thing, or, you know, it's up to the writer to figure out how much they need to do this, to me, it came off as a little excessive, because the description of eyes and stuff like that, when it's not necessarily relevant to their description, I guess, if I'm saying it right, seems unnecessary. It's hard for me to explain it, because with characters whose visual are very unimportant, I don't think it's necessary to describe them to that degree. That's the best way I can say it. So yeah. Um, so yeah, in general with that line, I probably would have made some allusion to the idea of her hair being the color of onyx, because it's recognizable to most people, like as a color. So considering this is a debut novel, I don't want to spoil it at all, but I do want to talk a little bit about our main POV characters. So I'm going to give just like quick little snippets of them, all right? So King Aaron. Aaron is the honorable king who literally like is so freaking honorable. He cares so much about his citizens. He wants to avoid war at all costs. He wants to just be a good person and make sure his people are good and happy. And you just gotta love him for it, because he's such this like, he has the capability of being just this remarkable badass, because he's a good fighter and stuff like that, and like, but he also just has this kind of, you know, just this feel, just this air of kind of goodness around him. Just like, it's like living in a world of savages and you just got this one good person. It's like, damn, you too good for this world. He's kind of one of those characters. So he's a lot of fun to read about. And I'm really interested to know like what more happens, because I feel like a character like that, you got to kind of throw dirt on him a little bit. You got to put him in a situation to test that goodness. So yeah. And then apart from King Aaron, we have King Asher, who I will basically only say he is a king unlike any that has ever existed in the history of his family. Let's just say that and just kind of leave it at that. He deals with some interesting stuff. He's a cool character with a lot of stuff going on, and I'm really interested to see how all that plays out, because some stuff really goes down in the culmination of his story arc. And Queen Mary. Queen Mary is well, she's a gem. Let's just say that. She's fun. She's one of like, she's got to be fun to write for, I think, actually. She's got to be kind of fun to write about. She's interesting. That's where I think I get my most Game of Thrones feels, from her character and like her whole situation. I think all of that, I don't know why, but like, I can't really put my thumb on it, but like the whole, like the entire, it's almost like the entire tone. If it was a movie, it's like the entire tone of the scenes and everything would just change, like when you get to her. So I really dig that. So I really like, despite the fact that we don't really get too much of these characters, what we do get is a lot of fun, and it does make you want to come back and actually learn more about them. And I think even beyond the war that's being promised, because it's War of the Fallows, like, I think even beyond the war that's being promised, we're setting up this great character depth and these great existential questions, and the idea of like, when is it okay for the parent to let their child be themselves? When are you no longer attached to your forebears? Like, how much do you owe them if they're responsible for you being where you are? And like, there's a lot of these kind of questions that I'm really interested to see what's going on, especially considering the one situation. But we're not going to talk about that because it's super spoiler free. So I don't want to risk really spoiling what happens in Asher's story, but the whole situation, the whole situation that kind of happens towards the end of his, part of the whole story or whatever. That's where I kind of lean towards the acceptance of, okay, this is proper dark fantasy, because it was very much normal. Like, I wouldn't call it dark fantasy, I just call it like regular fantasy for the most of it. And then we kind of get to the stuff that's going on towards the end of the book, because of course that's where all the fun stuff happens. It goes there. It kind of goes there, and it gets pretty dark. So this is more on the dark side fantasy. Not really grim dark, but I think it does have the potential to get there later. So right now we're just going to call it like light dark fantasy, just a little gray fantasy. And some of the other questions, like, I'm really interested about, apart from wanting to know what happened with this whole crazy scenario that happens with Asher, I really want to know more about the way the gods work. Like, I'm not going to say much about what happens in the book, but I want to know more about how that works, because, yeah, there's some fuckery going on, and I'm really digging it, and I'm really interested, so I actually really can't wait for the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this review up here before I get to, slipping into more spoilers, because I do want to really talk about this thing that happens, but you guys haven't read it yet, so you can't jump in the comments and tell me what your favorite part was about it. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it here and tell you I definitely recommend this story. Despite it having a little bit of growing pains, it's a great, great debut novel by Jahmil Jahmar Effend, and I really recommend it. And I want to say a special thank you to you guys, to Jahmil Jahmar, for giving me an advanced copy of the story. I really did enjoy it, and thank you so much for choosing me to review it. So let me reiterate, I think you guys should really pick it up. I think it's a great story, it's a great novel, and it's a great debut. And I really encourage more writers to, put their voices out there, because we need more blood in the world of literature, and we definitely need more voices in the world of fantasy, so we can get really interesting, cool, different stuff like this. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the video by asking you guys, what are some of your favorite debut novels by either a single writer or a team of writers, or, anything like that. So let me know in the comments down below. So remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.